It's out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, pretty far from everywhere. So in order to get here, you kind of have to get here by usually an airplane nowadays. But in the old days, you would always come to Hawaii by boat. There was Polynesian canoes in the very, very old days that traveled thousands of miles across the ocean. Soon there were others that came in bigger boats to explore the islands and do some trading with other countries in the world. Captain Cook being one of the more well-known ones. And as the years went on, the Americans became more closely related to Hawaii. And one in particular, Captain William Matson. He's a gentleman from Sweden who came to San Francisco in the mid-1800s, and he quickly got work with a shipping company that came to Hawaii. And soon he realized that there was lots of reasons to love coming to Hawaii, not just the business, but also the beautiful weather and all the other things that everybody loves about Hawaii. For him, though, the real attraction, I guess, was to set up a shipping company. So he raised some money, and his first ship to ever come to Hawaii was this sailing ship called the Emma Claudina, which made her maiden trip to Hilo from San Francisco in 1882. And business picked up pretty quickly, so he decided he needed new ships. That's another one, the Falls of Clyde, which is a ship that still is in Honolulu down at the Aloha Tower. It's parked next to the Maritime Center in a bit of disrepair, unfortunately. That's one of his late 1800 ships that crossed the Pacific. Soon it became clear that people wanted to come here too. They weren't just trading goods back and forth, but it became popular for tourists. So Captain Matson said, hey, let's build a pretty swanky cruise ship. And this was the first one of the so-called white ships. This isn't actually white, but it became white later. The SS Malolo. And that was built in 1927, coincidentally the same year that this building that we're in was created. And this hotel, as many of you probably know, was built by Matson specifically to serve its passengers when they arrived in Hawaii. Because there, as you can see, there just wasn't anywhere else to stay on the island at that time. That's how it looks today. There's a few more buildings around and a few more people too. So business became really good for Matson at this time with their tourism. They built more ships. That was the Lurline, the Matsonia, and this one, the Monterey, was one of their more recent ones. Around this time also was when Boeing decided to build jet airplanes. And in the late 50s, it became easier for people to fly to Hawaii rather than taking the ship, even though I think flying, of course, is faster, but doesn't have quite the pleasures of being at sea. It did essentially make cruise ship travel obsolete by the late 1960s. But there is a connection here for myself. This ship, the Monterey, was one that my parents met on a cruise from San Francisco to Australia, stopping here in Hawaii on the way. And so that was where my connection to the whole Matson family and story began. Later on, I became a passenger on the ship myself. My family traveled to Australia several times aboard the white ships to see my mother's family, and that was age 2. This is a real short clip I can put on to show you what it looked like on the high seas. That's departure in San Francisco. And that's me playing with some streamers. The music, I should mention, is also provided by our friends at the back here, Kavika and his band. This is a crude game of shuffleboard, which is, I'm not sure if kids still play that today, but it was fun for me at the time. That's my dad helping me push the little discs across the deck. swimming pool, of course, was a very popular spot for all the kids on the cruise ships. And they actually pumped real ocean water into the pool from the sea as the ship traveled along. So it was like swimming in the ocean, but in a pool. It was a 5-day trip across from San Francisco on these ships. And there we are pulling into Honolulu, I think in the mid-1970s, so it looks a little bit different. The tugboat coming out to help the ship park down at the Aloha Tower. And there is the Monterey parked at the Aloha Tower. Streamers were a big part of the ceremonies at any arrival or departure. And then back to the swimming pool, of course, for more practice. And it did get quite stormy on some days out in the middle of the ocean. A lot of people ended up stuck in their cabins for a few days on end, but this was not the normal. Usually it was a pretty smooth crossing. This one was not so smooth. I think this guy was a crewman and his hairpiece got blown off the side of the ship during the storm. It's a little bit nicer weather there, and that's saluting the captain. So that, back in those days, I didn't think I would be this interested in this topic, but 2 years ago I finished this book called White Ships, which was a coffee table style history of all the Matson ships. Luckily for me, I've sold them all. So, but it is, you can look at it on the internet on my website. Meanwhile, Matson, although the passenger ships don't exist anymore, they still are the primary carrier of freight from the mainland to Hawaii. That's one of their container ships in San Francisco. Getting closer to Hawaii. And of course, once the ships get to Honolulu, they unload their containers and deliver them all over the island, all the cargo that comes to Hawaii. So that's kind of what brought me here today, and a brief history about Matson and the connection to the hotel here and to shipping in Hawaii. So now we'll just do a quick book reading for you and bring out the band again. And then we'll do a book signing, and you guys can go and enjoy some beach time. So where's Robin? Okay.